Welcome back, everyone. So the auto track students have already heard my spiel, but I'll go ahead and let you know. I did get COVID over the break, and I'm not contagious, but it's still kind of taking a toll over my voice. So if I have to take a break and cough a little bit, I apologize in advance. I did manage to make it through the classes okay yesterday. We'll see how long that continues, but just want to make sure everybody's aware. Yeah, like I said, welcome back. I'm excited to see you all here. This is going to be the second year that I'm teaching the forensics course, and I've got some big plans. Probably my vision for the course is way too big for that practicality, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I've got some pretty big changes from last semester or from last year in store. It's going to be an exciting time. Last year, when I taught the course, it was just Mac students. We do have a smattering of undergraduate students taking part in the course, so you guys are welcome in the course, and I'm looking forward to having you here to provide some different perspective. Before we get going, I do want to make an announcement. This is just for the Mac students, though, but I did make this say that I would actually promote this. So most of you are going to be preparing for the CPA exam here within the next semester to the next year and a half. As you're doing so, you may want to consider getting involved in the MOCPA's, Missouri Society of CPAs, CPA Next program. We'll answer a lot of your questions you have as preparing for the CPA exam. Please make sure you check that out. It's just mocpa.org, candidate CPA Next. It's got a lot of resources that are available. I get a lot of questions, and I don't have answers for all of them, but I would wager that the MOCPA does, since that's kind of the business that they're in, is handling that. And that'll be the only time that I really talk about the CPA exam in this course. So yeah, we're going to be focusing on forensic accounting, a little bit of different branch here. For those of you who I've not really worked with before, I'm Dr. Barnes. I teach primarily accounting courses here in this building, but I did work as a forensic accountant for 5 years at KPMG. I took this course over for Dr. Shoniwa. I know he who shall not be named, I was really excited to take over the course, and I think we had a good course last year. There's some things that I learned from the experience and things that I want to focus on. Like I said, there may be a little bit of chaos. Part of that has to do with the fact I did have COVID, so my planning for the Christmas break was a little bit behind. But part of that is also, like I said, what I have planned is pretty big, pretty massive. It's very non-traditional. For those of you who've taken a graduate course with me, know exactly what I'm talking about. For those of you who have not, buckle up, because it is a lot different than just me standing up here lecturing and giving notes. There's going to be a lot of involvement on your part, which I think actually makes the course more robust and more interesting. So hopefully you find that engaging, and we'll look forward to that opportunity. Anyway, so office hours are a little bit weird. I don't normally teach on Tuesday, Thursdays. In fact, the first time I taught back on Tuesday, Thursday was my first year, and then I skipped like 9 years of teaching on Tuesday, Thursday until last year. And so my office hours are primarily going to be on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That does not mean I won't be here. Obviously, I will be here because I'm teaching on Tuesday, Thursdays, but I don't have scheduled office hours. You are still welcome to stop by my office. If I'm there, I'm more than happy to talk to you. If I'm not there, you can reach out to me and leave me an email, and I'm more than happy to set up a Zoom call or set up a time that I can meet with you. I'm pretty flexible in that. I always tell my students that my office hours go underutilized. So if you do have questions, if you do have issues, feel free to come talk to me. We're going to be meeting in this classroom and also 1432. And the reason for that is we're going to be doing a lot of group and interwork activities in this class. If you'll notice, this class has got 23 students in it, 22 right now because Jared's on a break. If I told you I'd zing you again, Jared. Yeah. Actually, Jared's just not here. Anyway, for this, we've got 23 students, and this classroom has like a capacity of 27. It's very difficult to kind of move around and do things and interact with groups in this classroom. So I requested another classroom that we have accessible during class periods. Unfortunately, 1420 is taken right now by a psychology class, so 1432 is kind of our backup, and we'll be able to utilize that. We'll talk about why that fits into the class structure here in a little bit, but there's going to be a little bit of confusion, I think, with that. Hopefully, I will clarify the procedures. I'm only just now kind of gotten the process down myself, but it should be pretty straightforward after a few repetitions. The required materials for this course basically is just access to the internet. I do record everything over Zoom, so if you're not here in person, you can attend via Zoom, or you can watch the class sessions on YouTube. I will not record the parts that we're working together in groups, but I will record the parts that we're together in class and discussing details, and that will go to YouTube channel. Also, everything goes in a bright space. It is a little bit barren right now. Actually, I shouldn't say that. For you, it looks a little bit barren. For me, it's absolute chaos because I'm trying to reorganize what I've done from a previous semester. But hopefully, we'll get that more organized and more filled out over the next few days. I do have the week 2 stuff up now. I know that you're probably looking at this on Monday saying he's got nothing posted. I can't even access it. The syllabus is now available and the week 2 materials are now available. So I have got up a little bit. Quick note, this came up last semester a few more times than I expected it to. You will notice that I said I have in bold that you'll be expected to check your school email for periodic updates. I had some issues with last semester with me reaching out to students and having questions and just not getting any responses. Or in one situation, the student responding 3 weeks later and says, "Oh, I just now checked my email." Please be in the habit of checking your email regularly, at least more than once every 3 weeks. Okay. I would expect you to probably do it on a daily basis. I won't send you emails every day, but I will expect you to be responsive to my emails when I do send them. So please get in the habit of doing that. If you don't have email accessible on a mobile device where you can check it on a regular basis, then get it to a scheduled habit of looking at it on a daily basis and some other item. I'm trying to do my best to kind of limit my email exposure. I try not to check my phone every single time it clicks or I get a notification, but I do try to check it on a pretty consistent basis. I expect you to do so too. As far as the text for this course, there's not a required text, but I strongly encourage you to have access to the Fraud Examiner's Manual through the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. Now, if you go on Amazon and try to buy a hard copy of this, it's about $400. All right. So I don't expect you to have access to that. That being said, you will note that there's actually a little note. There's a note down here in the syllabus is saying the Fraud Examiner's Manual can be deferred in part or perhaps entirely by student membership in the ACFE. So if you're very interested in forensics and want to get involved, first of all, I encourage you to get a student membership. It's very, very inexpensive. It's $25 for a year-long membership. And when I say deferred in part or entirely, I thought it was going to be in part, but all the students who had membership last year got free access to the Fraud Examiner's Manual, and it's a good resource to have. That being said, it is not required for this course. Everything that I'm going to give you will be referring to the Fraud Examiner's Manual, but will not require access to the Fraud Examiner's Manual. You'll just have a little bit of a leg up if you do have access to that. And if you are interested in pursuing this further, possibly getting your CFE credential, that might be a good resource for you to consider. One thing about the ACFE student membership is I do believe that to apply for that, you do have to have a reference from a current instructor. I am more than happy to provide that. All you have to do is send me an email says can you provide me for a reference for the ACFE student membership, and I'll send that worked out to you. So that's something to consider. Catalog description, this is pretty straightforward. The course objectives are not very detailed. We're going to be talking about the 4 objectives of the Certified ACFE Fraud Examiner's Manual, which are going to very heavily focus on fraud detection and prevention, fraud examination, investigation, and the law behind it. Our routine is going to be a little bit weird. Normally, we would start with fraud examination, and we'd move forward from there to learn about fraud schemes and fraud routines. We're going to start with investigation, and part of that has to do with the changes I'm making to this course. I'll talk a little bit about that. So our first topic for next week when we start these topics are going to be on investigations, and we're going to start with that. It's going to be a little bit weird because we haven't actually talked about any specific fraud schemes or type of fraud, but I do think it's important to have an understanding of investigations because we're starting our investigations almost immediately. So we're going to be starting it in class investigations starting next week. Really, technically on Thursday, though you will want to look at the materials before that. So, yeah, we'll start with, even though we're starting with investigations, we will cover all the aspects of the Fraud Examiner's Manual, and there'll be assignments to reinforce those as we go through that. During the semester, you can expect an average of 6 to 9 hours per week outside of class. As I've always said, usually this is going to be on the low end. We do a lot of in-class work. There are requirements outside of class for this. Part of this is going to be things that you will need to do before you come into class, particularly for the fraud cases that we're investigating. I will either have you watch a video or do a pretty lengthy reading. So you will have some additional work that you'll have to do outside of class. That being said, it will be rare that you'll be doing more than 9 hours of work a week outside of class. I would say it's going to be on the low end, on usual basis that we'll be working through. But it really depends on kind of what your own personal commitment is and what your role is in a particular situation. We'll get to that here in just a second. All right, so this week is basically, this is going to be the only time that we're officially meeting in class. And I'll talk a little bit about that real quick. So my plan was to actually do kind of an introduction to forensics, and two things kind of threw that to askew. The first of that was that cough that I just had. Okay, that was a reflection of the lingering effect of the COVID. I didn't get a chance to put things together as much as I would like to. The second one is the more relevant one. So if you're a graduate student, you probably received the email yesterday morning that there's a potluck lunch, and as the graduate council chair, I'm responsible for organizing that. I didn't really think about the fact that I would be teaching during the time that the potluck lunch was going on. Okay, so I decided to kind of kill two birds with one stone, so to speak, and we're going to be having a class during the potluck lunch, which is going to be over in Baldwin Hall 102. Now, are we going to be learning anything new? No. Okay, what are we going to be doing? Enjoying food. So if you're an undergraduate student, you can still join in. This is not going to be exclusive. So if you're an undergraduate student in the class, you are more than welcome to join. This is not a required class attendance. I'm not going to count points off if you don't attend. It's just free food for you all, okay? And it's just going to be something, show up and take your food, enjoy conversation with me and the other graduate students, and then go and move off. That's basically what Thursday is going to be, which if you're going to say, well, Dr. Barnes, I paid you to teach me about forensics. Trust me when I say you will get plenty of that in future weeks. It was just kind of a really weird conflict that I had to negotiate around, and that was my best solution. So yeah, that's something to note. We're going to be basically be starting off, kicking things off in earnest in week 2. As far as week 2 goes, basically what we're going to start doing is we're going to start out with week 2. We're going to start out the class period. It's an hour and a half class period, roughly. You will be breaking up into groups and pre-assigned groups, which I'm going to talk about those groups here in just a second. I did have to take some liberties, but I do want to talk a little bit about those. But pre-assigned groups, and you'll be working together to answer some questions on investigations. Now, there's two aspects of the questions. And again, those of you who have had me for graduate courses know how this works. Part of these are going to be individual questions that you will complete, or individual tasks that you will complete before you come to class. And then you will get together as a group and you will answer the remaining questions, which tend to be a little bit more rigorous and subjective in nature. The person who's assigned as the group leader is responsible for documenting that for the entire group and will submit those. Unlike other classes, which take place on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that will not be the entire class period. I did that in previous years, and usually my students finished in about 30 minutes, and we're just kind of chatting and doing other stuff for the period. So I decided to be a little bit more efficient with time. We will spend about half class answering the questions, and then once all the groups have got their submissions and their discussions ready, we will reconvene as class in here, and we will discuss those in the same class period. So instead of having a separation in classes, we're going to do those during the same class session. After that, on Thursdays, we're going to start out with a fraud case. And a fraud case is basically something that's going to be either a reading or a video that I will have you watch. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as a class, some of the takeaways. You will have a responsibility for summaries that you'll have to do, and I'll talk about the elements of those summaries here in just a little bit, but you'll have a very brief submission. It's basically a page to 2 pages. It's not meant to be onerous, just to make sure that you cover the material. And we'll talk about the elements and what was learned in the case in class. And then at the end of that, we will break again into groups and we will start our investigations. That's the part that's going to be the exciting part, is doing the investigations, which I'll get to back to the format for investigations. Trust me when I say it's going to be chaos until we get to the routine. Okay, I had to try to figure out exactly what was going to happen with this. And it's going to be a little bit unclear about what everybody is supposed to do. I've tried to make sure the instructions are as clear as possible. That being said, I still expect there to be some confusion to start out with. But let's go ahead and talk a little about fraud topics research. We're going to be focused on the topics in the ACFE Fraud Examiner's Manual. And there are 4 sections, which I've broken down into 3 topic areas per section. Okay. So when we start out, we'll be doing investigations on Monday. I will talk about some elements of investigations that will come from internet resources. Again, if you have access to the fraud examiner's manual, you have a little bit of advantage, but it's not required to be able to answer the questions. Most of the questions should come from just a little bit of research from the links that I provide, and then additional research online, and then discussing some kind of matters as a group. This is intended to be completed within 30 to 45 minutes when working together as a group, assuming that everybody does their job before coming to class, which I expect you to do. And so coming to class, we'll do that. Then we'll reconvene about, talk a little bit about later in the class session about those topics. I do want to clarify for this, and I've not assigned anybody as a group leader, I don't think, who is not going to have been a group leader in a previous class. At least I don't think that's the case. I could be completely wrong about that. I tried to make sure that that was the case. When you're a group leader, you're responsible for aggregating all information. So that means all of your individual, all of the individual submissions and all of the group submissions. So you will want to take notes, and you'll be responsible for detailing that throughout the, discussing that in the class. So if you're a group leader, basically the accountability is upon you. Everybody will have a chance to serve as a group leader multiple times throughout the course. So it's not something that's just going to be constrained to a few individuals. But I did try to make sure that the group leaders for the first class session we're doing this were people who have been in my classes before and know how this routine works. If you have questions about that, obviously you can reach out to me. And then as far as that goes, basically you'll aggregate the information, you'll upload that to Brightspace so I have a chance to review. It is a little bit confusing because this is just a side note. The only group leaders are the only ones who are responsible for submitting things. But if you know Brightspace, if you leave a submission blank, it will throw notifications at you saying you're missing a submission. So you're welcome to submit a blank document just to get rid of the notification in Brightspace. That's not required though, okay? If you just want to get rid of that. That's one of the drawbacks of doing group leader only submissions is that Brightspace does kind of bug people. If you're okay with that and don't get bugged by Brightspace, then, Hakuna Matata. All right. Yeah, so then we're going to talk about these as groups. These are going to be worth 5 points each. It's just kind of a token amount to make sure that everybody's doing the work. And I'm just going to review to make sure everybody's done what they need to do. Thursdays, again, we'll have the fraud cases. This will require outside reading or viewing of preparation. When I say viewing, I'm not going to plan on doing a lot of videos, but the very first case is a video. It's actually one that the auditing students will be familiar with. Remember Rita Crundwell back from 417? We're going to watch the movie on that. It's a documentary. It's about an hour and 10 minutes long, and I've already posted that. The first assignment's available. It's actually posted on YouTube, and you can watch it through YouTube. It's also available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV. So if you've got access to that, you can do that. But it's called All the Queen's Horses, and it's about the fraud that occurred at Dixon City, Illinois, back in the early 2000s. Late 2000s, early 2010s. It's pretty fascinating. So there's also, by the way, there's also a TV show. What was the Scam Goddess, I think was the name of the TV show about a lady who did investigations of that. And her first episode was actually about the same case. So if you want to do some additional viewing, you can watch that. It's not quite as thorough. The person who put the video that we're going to watch together, she's actually an accounting instructor at DePaul, I believe, and she did a really nice job with the documentary. So I encouraged you all to watch that in 417. Now I'm going to force you all to watch that in 620. So it's going to be very interesting. It does require a little bit of viewing time, but I think you'll enjoy it. That'll be our first case for that. So once you've finished the viewing, that you'll do a brief write-up. The write-ups are going to be pretty straightforward. There's elements that I've specifically identified that occur in your write-up. So summary of the case and the key parties, the financial impact of the fraud, identification of the relevant fraud risk factors, and the primary lessons learned from the case. Now, I do want to make a note of this because we're not going to specifically talk about this, but I've talked about this in other classes. When I'm talking about fraud risk factors, I am talking about the fraud triangle specifically. So people who've heard me talk about this many, many times know exactly what I'm talking about, but I knew that we have some new people in here. So fraud risk factors are going to be pressure, opportunity, and rationalization, which are basically the elements of the fraud triangle. Those are specifically the fraud risk factors you'll need to identify in the case. What was the pressure? What was the opportunity present? And what was the rationalization of the fraud, the party that committed the fraud? It'll become pretty easy over time, but I do want to clarify that's what I mean by the fraud risk factors. It's not just an arbitrary statements that I make. So you'll do the write-up, and we'll talk about that. Those will also be worth 5 points each. They'll be submission due at the beginning of class period. We'll spend about 30 to 40 minutes talking about the case and some of the things, some takeaways from the case. And then we'll probably at that point have our quiz. Okay. So as a lot of people know, I'm kind of anti-exams at the graduate level because I like to focus on more of learning of the content. Do I think that the quiz is the most effective means of conveying this information? No, but I do think it's the most fun way of conveying the information. So it's going to be a 5-question quiz. Part of the reason that we're going to have 1432 available is if you don't have a computer available that can access Brightspace, you can go into the computer lab and do the quiz. But it'll take about 10 minutes and we'll take the quiz. The quiz will cover the immediately preceding material that we've covered. So any topic areas. So like the first quiz will cover the investigation stuff that we covered on Tuesday, as well as the case that we're going to discuss that we discussed previously. And then, yeah, we'll have the quiz on that and be responsible for that. It is tended to be a low stress environment. It's just 5 multiple choice questions for 3 points each. It is not a make or break situation. That being said, I do insist on these quiz being taken without notes. I'm going to be very, very insist on making sure everybody's keeping their browsers clean and not looking up stuff while they're taking the quiz. It is not going to be one of those things that will make a big difference in your grade. If you do poorly on the quizzes, you'll end up with a B in the class, okay, instead of an A. So please don't violate the trust that I'm giving you on this one. Please make sure that you're taking the quizzes free from any outside influence. I do think that you'll find the quizzes pretty straightforward and pretty easy to navigate. I don't think they're going to be particularly difficult. Simply, they're just going to be a reflection of the material that we're covering in class. So the plan is to do that in the middle of class on Thursday, and then once the quizzes are done, once we've broken and talked a little bit about the quiz answers, that's when we'll break up into the fraud investigations. All right, here's where things are going to get a little bit off the rails, okay? So we did some in-class fraud investigations last semester, and in my opinion, those were the most fun part of the class. So I basically said I wanted to do fraud investigations again. My rise were originally pretty big for the class, and I was saying we're going to do 4 fraud investigations, and I realized that was just too much. So we're breaking it back down to 3. Basically, the way this is going to work is, again, you're going to be pre-assigned to groups, and these will be the same groups that you're assigned to for your project cases. Now, just as a note, there's basically the way the structure for the group works is that I've kind of separated the classes into 3 sections of 7 to 8 students each. And those students will be the ones that you'll work with in groups consistently. And you'll be in a group for 3 weeks, and then I'll rotate groups on you, but it'll still be within that same group of people that you're in. I have not finalized the group assignments yet because if somebody looks and says, I don't know any of the people in here, I'm not comfortable with this group, I have a personal grudge against somebody in this particular section, I want to make sure that we get that worked out before the final groups assignments are finalized. So I'm going to give you basically until Thursday before I do that. The reason I'm mentioning this now is that I do need to send some documents out to some of the group members that will help them with this project. So I need to get that finalized currently. So please, when we get to that point and looking at the group members, take a look at the people who are in the section of the group. And if you just have a real problem with being in this group of people, or you want to be in a different group section, let me know so I can make the changes. Okay. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that. But basically what will happen is you'll be in a group you'll be in an individual group for about 3 weeks with the same people, and then we'll rotate groups around. Everybody will have a chance to both serve investigation, do 2 investigations, and then we're going to do something called case administration. And basically what that is that the people who are case administrators will be the ones who will be conducting the fraud. Okay. So the way this works is we've got a case. It's called the Tallahassee Bean Counters is our first case. All right. 4 of the groups have been assigned to the investigation. And basically what all that means is you've got to find the fraud. All right. So the investigators are going to have to find the fraud. And there's 3 different parts to that. There's the actual examination. There's going to be the interviewing process, and there's going to be the reporting process. So if you're in one of those groups that's assigned investigation, you have to find the fraud. If you're in the other 2 groups, you're the ones who are responsible for administering the fraud. Okay. You know the case, you're going to have the solutions, and people who are going to be investigating are going to be asking you questions. Now, you may say that that's a shortcut, and part of that is that it's a big, usually this is going to be done by the instructor, and that's the way the cases are designed. I tried to do this on my own in a previous course, and it is a lot of work, particularly when you've got a lot of students who are doing this. So I wanted to kind of delete the responsibility, but there's actually another reason why I'm doing this, because I think everybody needs to be on the other end and see what the solutions are. First of all, so that you can learn how fraud is conducted. Not fraud investigation, how fraud is actually conducted, okay? And secondly, so that you have some knowledge about how the frauds are built so that you can use this knowledge moving forward. But we'll talk about that in a second. Um, as far as this goes, basically the first two groups are going to be assigned to conduct the case, and the other four groups are going to be assigned to investigate the case. And then, like I said, this will take place in three parts. There will be a examination where you ask preliminary questions about the case. And so just for context, we'll go ahead and take a look so that I can actually show you how this works, because it's going to be a little bit confusing unless I don't. So we can see this in week 2, investigation part 1. So here are the groups that, whoops, I probably shouldn't show the names on here. So hold on, I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, now that we've not displayed a whole bunch of information on YouTube, okay. Yeah, so I do want to make a note of how the investigation works, okay? So the investigation is going to be consisting of the parts that I mentioned before, and you're going to have deliverables for each of those 3 parts. My grading for this will be how in-depth your analysis is. You do not need to find the entire scope of the fraud. If you do, great. I hope that you do. But if you put in the diligent effort, you should get full credit on this. The reason I mention this is that in the case, it talks about how this is competitively graded. It's not competitively graded in this course, okay? So you're not competing against the other groups to try to find the fraud. And I'm not going to give one group 5 points because they only got half the fraud, whereas another group got 80%, so they get 8 points. I'm just basically making sure that you've done a consistent job in your analysis. That being said, you do need to be very, very thorough in your investigation and make sure you follow my instructions. And my instructions are very detailed here, so you'll want to read through these as a group and make sure that you're following those. As far as the case administrators go, you don't have any specific deliverables other than giving me updates on how the groups that you're responsible for administering the fraud, how they're doing on their job. So basically, you're going to tell me how many inquiries they sent, how well you were able to respond to those, and how decent their progress has been. Okay, like if you think that they're making effective progress in the case, case. Again, I do think that for the first time that we do this, it's going to be very confusing. I'm going to have a very heavy hand on this. Once we get to the second round, it'll become a little bit more commonplace. And once we get to the third investigation, hopefully by that time, we'll all be experts at this. Again, I wanted to do multiple cases, but it was just too much to try to handle on my own, which is why I'm breaking this down. I do think this is going to be a very interesting prospect when we've got multiple groups that are going to be administering the cases themselves. So I think it's going to be very enlightening to see how that works. And like I said, all the groups in the class, everybody in this class will have a opportunity not just to be an investigator, but to be a quote unquote fraudster in this particular situation. So, that's actually going to be very relevant to the final research case in this course, but we'll get to that in a second. So I do want to talk a little bit about this next step, okay? So the healthcare fraud investigation presentation. This is still fairly tentative, but it's going to be for the graduate students only because there does need to be a requirement for a separation between graduate requirements and undergraduate requirements. So for those of you who are undergraduates, you don't need to worry about this. You won't be doing this. This is going to be a fairly informal presentation to a healthcare attorney who I worked with in forensics. His name is Ken Zico. He's one of those individuals that if you get him talking, he will never stop talking. So very much like myself, but imagine me like on a whole lot of caffeine. So yeah. Yeah. So he's a very, very good guy. He's very, very knowledgeable, one of the smartest people I worked with, and I owe him a lot for my career. And he's graciously agreed to speak. We're not determined what the date is. It's tentatively going to be April 23rd. But what I thought would be fun is instead of having him come up and talk and everybody just be kind of like, this is over, instead you're going to talk to him. So we're going to be doing some healthcare investigations and frauds. So the groups, I'm going to be signing those at random. It's going to be among the graduate students, and you're going to be presenting on a famous healthcare fraud or healthcare issue. So it doesn't need to be fraud specifically. You could talk about cybersecurity, healthcare, or some topic along that area that's fraud adjacent. And you're going to be presenting to Ken, and he's going to give you some critiques and some insights about what his experience is in this area. He is very knowledgeable about healthcare compliance and one of the top people in the country on this. So you're going to have to really know your stuff for this presentation, but it's going to be worth about 30 points on that. All right. Now for the fraud scheme projects. This is going to be kind of the natural conclusion on this as far as what we're going to be doing. So you notice I said 3 investigations instead of a set of 4. The reason why is once we get to our final set of weeks, so we're going to be doing weeks 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once we get to the end, 11, or sorry, I think it's like 12, 13, 14, basically everybody in the class is going to commit a fraud. Okay. Not a real fraud. Okay. You're going to create your own fraud. And the reason I do this is something I mentioned before, is that I wanted to have everybody become experts at committing fraud. This is something that my first forensics instructor told me, and that I'm very fond of saying. To be a fraud investigator, you have to know how to commit fraud. And I'm going to teach you guys how to commit all kinds of fraud. You're going to be very knowledgeable in that area. What's going to stop you from going out committing fraud? Basically, your sense of ethics is what I'm hoping. Okay, that, or maybe the risk aversion that a lot of you will have as natural of being just kind of this mindset. That being said, I want you to be able to understand how fraud is committed so that you can understand how to investigate. So we're going to do basically kind of a little swap. You're going to commit your own fraud. You're going to create a fraud case. And basically, in the last 3 weeks of the semester, you're going to be assigned to one of the other students in the class. Plus, there's another online student who's going to take part in this as well. And you're going to investigate their fraud. So you're going to be responsible for both administering a fraud and also investigating the fraud during that time period. Now, you will notice these cases that I'm going to give you, the Tallahassee bean counter case and the follow-up cases as well. They are very, very detailed and rigorous. I do not expect your case to be that thorough, but it will need to be somewhat thorough. You'll need to think about that in detail. And I'm going to have multiple deliverable points for this, okay? And then these will be posted probably by, if not the end of this week, early next week, about what the deliverable points were. It's going to be kind of a step-phase process, what we're going to be doing throughout the semester. But the goal is to have your case ready by the time that the week 12 comes around, so that somebody in the class, whoever you're assigned to, can do the investigation. And you'll be doing the same things that we're doing through the other investigation. You'll be answering questions, you're providing documentation that's not necessarily immediately available in the fraud case itself. Now, I'm going to mention this here in just a second. Commonly, when I noticed this in the previous class last year when I did this, a lot of students utilized AI tools for this particular activity. And that is perfectly fine, okay? You are welcome to use AI tools in any of my courses. For this one, I think it's a very good idea because this is something that's going to require some creative license, and LLMs are very good at this type of technique. Everybody know where I'm going with this? Yeah, so the auditing students definitely do, because I said this yesterday in auditing class. If you use an AI tool, you have to disclose the extent of the work that you used for the AI tool. It just has to be exposed for every single assignment that you use it in this course. It doesn't need to be dictated for every single task, but you do need to specify if you used it on an assignment in this course. This is particularly important for this particular assignment right here, because I expect a lot of people to use AI to supplement the work that they're doing. And it makes sense, because if you're going to create fictitious financial statements, trying to do that by hand is a mediocre task. Okay, it's one of the menial tasks. I've done it before. It's very, very tedious. So having the LLM put that together and just doing some concise editing is a much more effective process, but you have to disclose that information when you do something like that. All right, as with all my courses, we do have subjective assessment. I don't anticipate a lot of problems in this, okay? Mostly any subjective problems that we have is just going to come from attending classes or not submitting assignments on time. And a lot of that will be forgiven as long as you let me know in advance, okay? If you have a problem with an assignment and can't get it in on time, say, Dr. Barnes, I'm really struggling. Can I get an extension? Well, my answer 9 times out of 10 will be yes. The only time I will say no is usually if you've done that for like the 4th or 5th time, okay? If you can't attend a class, you just say, Dr. Barnes, I can't attend class. That's all I require, all right? You do not need to justify. This is something that's become increasingly common, is people think, I need to make sure I explain to Dr. Barnes that it's a legitimate reason. I'm trusting you. You're adults, a legitimate reason. Especially if you're in gastric distress, you do not need to explain the extent of that. I've had way too many visible illustrations of that, okay? And it does stick with you. Say, yeah. So please do not share that information with me. Just tell me that you're not going to be able to, but make sure you tell me in advance if you're not going to be attending class, okay? Or if you're not going to be able to get something on time. I will forgive almost anything that happens. If something emergency comes up, like say, for example, that you're driving back from your hometown and you have a blowout on the highway, and it's like, oh my gosh, Dr. Barnes is never going to excuse this absence. If you can't let me know before class, let me know as soon as possible, and just tell me, I had car trouble. I couldn't get into class on time. I'm so sorry, Dr. Barnes. I'll watch the video. I'll forgive that. About the only time I don't forgive stuff is when you just kind of ignore me, okay? I don't like being ignored. So, as all instructors do. It's 25 points. Again, 90 to 95% of my students usually get full credit for this. If you miss credit, it's because you just basically violated my golden rules there. The grading is a little bit different depending on whether you're in the undergraduate section or graduate section. You can kind of see the breakdown here. This is still tentative. I'm not 100% certain that we'll have all these grades here, but this is what my goal is right now. You'll know my policy for participation and attendance. You have to be very, very engaged in this course. So attendance is required. It's expected. Okay. At this point right now, everybody's got this note that they should be here in class, and if you can't be in class, you should let me know. That's basically the requirement. As far as participation goes, there's a lot of group work in here, and I really am conscientious of the free rider problem. Does everybody know what I mean by the free rider problem? If you've got 4 people in a group, 3 people can do the assignment, another one can basically play Tetris on their phone. Do people play Tetris anymore on their phones? Yeah, okay. Don't nod your head so vigorously, Clayton. Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, just as a note, Clayton may be playing Tetris, and he may be the free rider. So
Class.
not in class. All right, I'm all right. This is going off the rails. Sorry. Yeah. So if you are in a group, I'd expect you to contribute and be engaged in the group while you're in there. Okay. So please make sure that I don't have to call you out and say you're not contributing to the group effectively. Participation is expected when you're participating in group work, particularly since we're going to have half of our class sessions are going to be group work. The first part of our Tuesday classes and the latter part of our Thursday classes are going to be very heavy in that. As far as engagement in the class sessions, when we're talking about that, even if you're not a group leader, I do expect you to be engaged and paying attention to what I'm talking about. Okay. This will be stuff that I'm testing on the quizzes and stuff that I expect you to know as it's going to be relevant moving forward. So you do need to be taking diligent notes. And even if you're not the ones responsible for talking about the content, you do need to be responsible for making sure that you know the content. So eyes up here and paying attention. If you're on your computer, you're taking notes, not browsing social media saying Dr. Barnes is the worst. Okay. I don't know that anybody would actually say that, at least not in a known capacity. Maybe if you go to like rate my professors in an anonymous capacity, but who knows? That's just one of those things, like rate my professors. Like I used to get like all kinds of feedback on that. I don't think I've had a rating in like 6 years. So I don't know. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Yeah. I think it's just basically like I'm indifferent to Dr. Barnes. Yes. Yeah.
There's a thing about like people are more likely to leave a review about something like a negative review than if it's a positive review.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So funny story. I don't really think that the rate my professor is an accurate reflection. So I'm not pandering for that. It's kind of funny to me because I used to take a lot of stock in that. And then I got a really, really nasty review. I know exactly who it was too, by the way. Got a really, really nasty review on rate my professors. And so some students came to my office and said, "How are you doing, Dr. Barnes?" Says, "I'm a little bit depressed. I got a bad review on rate my professors." Guess what happened immediately after that? I got like 3 good reviews on rate my professors. So I gamed the system. Okay. I gamed the system. Yeah. Anyway, that's not at all relevant to this course. I probably should cut that out of the video, but oh well, Anyway, so yeah, if you have any issues, please make sure you let me know, and make sure you can communicate to me if you're having problems. I will make any accommodations that are necessary as possible to try to make this as a pleasant experience for everybody. But if you do miss a class meeting, you are responsible for the content that's covered. This is particularly important that you communicate this early, especially since if you miss a class meeting, your group will be relying on some work from you. So I would like to know this sooner rather than later. Again, I know things can come up at the last minute, but please make sure that you're diligent communicating to me. And oops, I hit the enter key and my cursor was way up here. So yeah. All right. So yeah. Academic integrity, this has come up a little bit in recent years, and I want to just clarify. I encourage you all to work together, and I know that a lot of you do. I encourage you to work together even more so. Standing alone is very, very difficult, especially for group projects. So making sure that you work together, 2 minds are better than one, or 2 heads are better than one, as the old saying goes. So 4 or 5 are going to be even better. I think at 5 you have diminishing returns, but still. Anyway, I encourage you to work together, but please make sure that at the end of the day that anything you deliver is on your own, especially if it's an individual assignment. The fraud cases, if you want to get together and talk about the fraud cases in advance or watch the videos together, that's fine, but do not verbatim copy exact wording from what your summaries are. The summaries do need to be on your own. I already talked about the course policy and AI. You can use AI in any capacity in this course other than the quizzes. The quizzes, you cannot do that. We had a little bit of a discussion during our department meeting yesterday about how AI tools can now actually emulate people on Brightspace. They'll log into Brightspace and take quizzes. Don't do that. If I find out that's happening, I'll be very disappointed. I'll be impressed, okay? I'll be impressed that you use the AI tools for that, but I'll be disappointed. that is committing fraud in a fraud course, which is both impressive and also just shaming at the same time. Yeah, so please don't use AI tools on the quizzes, but anything else you use AI tools. But again, as I stated, if you use an AI tool, you have to disclose that you use the AI tool on any assignments done in this course. If I find out that you used an AI tool and you did not disclose it, it will be considered academic misconduct and treated accordingly. Okay. I'm being taking a pretty hard line on that because it's becoming increasingly obvious that students are using AI tools more frequently. I have no problem with that. I think that it's important to get acclimated to the use of AI tools, but you do need to tell me if you're using AI tools. Okay. Um, if we have any disability issues, I don't think it's going to be a problem in this course. At least I don't anticipate it, but please let me know if you have any access issues. I don't anticipate any extra credit being given in this course, but we'll talk a little bit about that. There may be an opportunity for extra credit in the course. We'll see what happens. If I do, it's probably going to be my traditional give you an opportunity to get a 15 out of 15 on a quiz, replacing your lowest quiz grade. Most of you will know my policies on conduct. Please make sure you demonstrate your understanding, your effort to me throughout the semester. Those are the things that I grade on. I am a big advocate for effort in a course that can kind of make up for any lack of understanding you have. I do put a premium on that. So making sure you get your assignments done and you're engaged in class is a big important feature to me. Everybody knows by now I talk really quickly. So if I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. I will repeat something if necessary. You can also watch it on YouTube at 0.75 speed, which I'm fond of saying that when I'm 0.75, I sound a little bit drunk, so yeah. That's the entertaining part. I can only imagine like students together. What do you want to do? Let's watch Dr. Barnes tonight on 0.75 speed, and we'll just laugh at how silly he sounds. Yeah. Make sure you're professional while you're in class. You can have fun, but you do need to make sure you get your work done. If you contact me with via email, it does need to be professionally written, professionally communicated. And the most important one is that everything that's done in this course is going to be done over the course of the semester. So you do need to be consistent throughout the semester and make sure that you are doing everything that's necessary. I have a personal history of basically doing really well for like 2/3 of a period of time and then kind of being lackadaisical for 1/3. I understand that the lag can happen, especially like the midpoint of the semester. That's kind of consistent where I've known that your grade is for the entire semester, not for 2/3 of the semester. So I'm going to be evaluating that one. And then this one's probably not relevant, but if there's something that's not covered in the syllabus that you have to exercise professional judgment on, ask me for guidance on that. Don't try to make the decision just all on your own. All right, so there's some boilerplate information here. I do want to talk very quickly about some communication information. So just important contacts. If you have any issues that you're not comfortable reaching out to me about, first of all, hopefully you are comfortable with me, especially since most of you have had multiple classes. This is number 5 for many of you. Okay, so the 5th class will be taken with me. At this point, hopefully you're comfortable with asking me questions. If not comfortable, call me Michael. You're still going to call me Dr. Barnes, but comfortable contacting me with any issues you have. But if there's something that comes up that you need to talk to a higher authority, you can always reach out to Dr. Caden. Her contact information is given here, or you can reach out to the interim dean, which is Eric Dixon. We're serving as interim dean for the School of Business Professional Studies. Those are going to be your higher authorities. I don't anticipate this coming up either, but I want to make sure that you know who your contacts are in that situation. All right. So let's go ahead and really quickly talk about what we're going to be doing moving forward. Like I said, we are not quote unquote meeting in this class on Thursday. We're not having a class session. I encourage you to also all take part in the potluck event. So for those of you who did not get the email, I think it was all the graduate students, but undergraduates in this course, you're welcome to participate as well. It's going to be from 11:30 to 1:30 over in Baldwin Hall 102, which is the Little Theater. And basically, this is something we started at the graduate council last year that we all put together potluck dishes, and we're going to actually feed the graduate students. That's the goal here. And so I'm telling my graduate students about this right now so they can come. I'm going to be making my chicken taquitos, which if you were at the MAC ceremony, then you remember those. I'll be making those again. So hopefully you'll enjoy those. But yeah, Baldwin Hall through it 102 for that. At least I'm hoping that's the case. I was the only person signed up to bring a dish like as of this morning. So it may be making a lot of taquitos. Now, I know some people have actually signed up since then, but it should be a good experience. When we get back, I want to make sure that we're clear as what the routine will look like. Okay, so when we get back, um, we'll start out with investigation. So Tuesday will basically be, you'll have some work that you'll need to do before Tuesday. That's going to be the first part of the investigation. I can actually go back to that. I'm going to scroll up really quickly, so don't look. All right. All right. So there will be a couple of resources. These are the resources you'll need. You will notice that there's two sections. There's the individual questions and the group questions. The individual questions should be answered beforehand. And when I say answered, not just jotted down, you do need to have an actual document that you prepare these questions on. You will submit that to your group leader. And I'm not going to scroll down, but you'll find your group leader in here. If you don't know how to contact the people in the class, first of all, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out through Brightspace to reach out to that. Given that there's some new faces in here, I don't anticipate you'll know everybody in the classroom, but you'll get acclimated pretty quickly to the people in the class. So you'll reach out to your group leader and you'll send them the information about what your answers are to those individual questions. At the start of Tuesday, we will break into groups. You will talk about your answers to the individual questions, and you'll come to a consensus as a group about what your answers are to the individual questions, because they're, for the most part, you should have pretty consistent answers, but there may be some differences. So you'll come to a consensus, the group leader will record those, and then you'll answer the group questions, which are a little bit more subjective in nature. So you'll answer those as groups. You'll have about 30 to 45 minutes to answer those, depending on how long it takes. And then we'll come back and we'll meet and convene and we'll review those answers as a class on Tuesday. The group leader will be responsible for uploading all the responses, and you'll notice this is both individual and group. So that's the reason that you have to document your responses as a group, because your group leader has to copy those into the assignment, and those will all go to Brightspace, and I will review those after class. Those are not due immediately during class, but they're due by the beginning of next class. So you don't have to necessarily have those immediately available, though we will be talking about them. All right. For the next part, for Thursday, which will be 2 weeks from this, or sorry, a week from this coming Thursday, that is when we're going to be doing our first case. Like I said, it's all the Queen's horses, which is about the fraud in Dixon City, Illinois. So you will watch the video beforehand, and you will prepare your summary before we meet as a class. And if you remember, just real quick clarification, the 4 parts of the summaries. Did anybody get sick when I do scrolling like this? I try to not to do it too much, but I feel that I just make people dizzy when I do that. So summary of the case and the key parties, the financial impact of the fraud, the identification of the relevant fraud risk factors, pressure, opportunity, rationalization, and the primary lessons learned from the case. Okay. All of those need to be dictated in your write-up. We're going to come back into class. We're going to talk about that at the beginning of Thursday. We'll have our first quiz next Thursday, about 12:45, roughly about the middle point of class. Then once that's done, we will actually start our investigations. Now, the investigations, you will want to prepare some things in advance. Let me go ahead and move to the investigation part so we can actually talk a little bit about what your expectations are for that. So the groups that are investigating, okay, you will actually discuss the details of the case with your group, okay, and you're going to develop a list of 5 requests for information, okay. So these are going to be sent out, develop a list of 5 requests for information. This is what you'll be doing as part of your group meeting, is develop those five requests for information. You'll send those to your contacts. Now, those contacts are listed below. I've listed the contacts in the groups 1 of 2 who will be responsible for that. I do want to clarify for that because it's a little bit confusing. The reason I did that is so that you're not emailing everybody in the group and there's confusion about who should respond. But if you are a contact, you can reach out to the other group members and say, how should I answer this question? Or you can reach out specifically to Clayton because he's kind of the contact for that and say, I'm not sure what the answer to this question is. At the very least, he can reach out to me and say, Dr. Barnes, what's your feedback on this? Okay. So if you're a contact, you're responsible for making the responses, but they should be fairly objective responses given the detail that I have to do, you'll look at. But you'll want to look at the case and develop those 5 questions. And then once those questions are submitted and they've been responded to, then there'll be another follow-up list of questions that will be submitted between then by that. So the way that I think this is set up, and I want to clarify this. So the first set of questions, the first request for information, this will recur before the Tuesday or Thursday class session. Okay. So this is a little bit confusing, so I want to make sure that we're clear on this. So as a group, you want to develop your first request for information, which involves you as a group reviewing the case and saying, all right, what questions do we want to ask? So you'll want to make sure that you develop those 5 requests for information. You will need to get those to the people that you're asking, the contacts. You'll want to do those. So I think I said this to the best of your ability. Okay, sorry. No, you'll want to get those to the group people, the contacts before the Thursday class next week. That will give them an opportunity to look up the information that you need to respond to that you responded to and provide that detail. So let's say, for example, just going to do a hypothetical. Let's say you're in group 3 and I'm your contact. You will send that information to me before the class on next Thursday. Hopefully, at least hopefully it'll end up with enough time for me to review that and get your answers back. Because if you do that like immediately before the class, I won't have a chance to look everything up. So we'll say at least a day in advance. Does that make sense? I don't think I specified that in the case, which is why I'm walking through this now. So group 3, send you, I'm your contact, send it to me. I will aggregate the responses. I will get those back to you. Then when we meet next Thursday, you'll review the responses to the previous request for information and develop a second list of 5 requests for information. Your contact will provide you responses to the next 24 to 48 hours. So I know it's a little bit confusing, so I just want to clarify the timeline for this. All right. Starting sometime next week, you'll develop your list of questions. You'll get that to your contact prior to the class period, next Thursday's class period, hopefully at least 24 hours before that. So we'll say Wednesday. They'll get the information back to you. You will review those responses as a group on Thursday, and you'll develop a new list of questions on Thursday that you will get to your contact, which they will then send back to you. Now, there's a few notes on this. You can request additional information. You may say that 10 questions is a lot, but you will find that you'll have a lot more than 10 questions given the scope of the case. You can send additional requests for information, but you do need to be very conscientious of your time, your contact's time. If you send like 40 questions and just kind of say, send me all the information you've got, I'm going to tell the contact, yeah, don't even bother responding. Okay. If they're not conscientious of your time and your energy, then you don't need to be conscientious of their request. Okay. So usually you're going to send one request at a time. It needs to be well worded, concise, and very specific in the detail that it requests. Okay. So please be conscientious about that. So that's what the notes down here are saying. Then once you get to that, you're going to submit all of your requests for information, your responses. That's going to come into play the following Tuesday. Okay, so that's going to be due the following Tuesday. So that's basically what we've got moving forward. We'll kind of debrief on that and get to that point, and I'll make sure that everybody knows. But kind of the confusing part and the one that I didn't specify clearly and make sure that you have your first requests for information done before next Thursday's class. Again, probably at least 24 hours in advance so that somebody has a chance to respond to you. And your contacts are specified in the list below, which I'm not going to scroll down and highlight names just because I'm a little bit self-conscious about that, but you can reach out to your contacts. If you are a contact in groups 1 or 2, and you're concerned about what type of information you need to provide, again, Clayton is kind of be your first point of contact, which you can reach out to Clayton and he'll answer the questions. If you're really confused and not sure what to do, you can reach out to me and I'll provide you guidance with that as well. I'm actually going to be handling some investigations myself for the online students, so I'll have some information as well for you. But do not worry too much about that right now. I'm not going to provide the solutions manual until we make sure that all the groups are finalized. Okay. All right. With that, that's pretty much it. Are there any questions or any concerns about what we're doing moving forward? Again, I know that there's a lot of information here. It's going to be very confusing, especially as we start moving forward through it. This is a work in progress, so I appreciate your patience as we work together. Hopefully this will be an engaging and fun experience for all of us, as well as informative and educational. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I will see those of you who are at lunch on Thursday. Otherwise, we'll see you all next Tuesday.
Thank you for the